Okay, everybody hear me? Did I turn it on is the question, I guess. Yeah, okay, thanks. All right, I'm Gus Hunt. I'm the Director of Application Services in CIA. We are the executive agent for building the Library of National Intelligence I'm going to talk to you about today. If I get the first slide up, please. In application services, we do a lot of stuff that you guys are familiar with, I think, and many of you have encountered it, and some of you want some of it. But in the application stuff that we do, things that might come to mind are things like Trident. Right, we do a lot of work in Google Earth and have been working closely with NGA on their deployment of Google Earth in support of the community writ large. We do Fluent, which is on JWICS, which does machine translation for everybody. We do the FAST tools, which are the conversion utilities that are available out there for everybody to do. We do a thing called Intel Trust, which is the sensitive content, but what I'm getting to in this long laundry list of things I'm coming down to is that this Thursday night, of interest to all of you, we'll be deploying a thing called CIA Wire on JWICS. And CIA Wire is our single integrated presence of all of the disseminated intelligence that the CIA has on one site. So Friday morning, when your analysts come into work, tell them to check it out. The address is ciawire.cia.ic.gov on JWICS. Now, why do I say that? Well, CIA Wire is one of these things that is going to become part of, and all the content that's in there is going to go into the Library of National Intelligence. It becomes a critical piece and an underpinning of what's going to be in there. All right. So if I can go to the first slide, next slide. Thank you very much. All right. So after the big introduction that we had today and all this talk about L&I feel somewhat like it's going to be anticlimactic when I talk to you, because I got to say bluntly, the need to do the Library of National Intelligence in my mind is a no-brainer, okay? And in fact, something that is absolutely long overdue. We should have done this a long, long, long time ago. The concept of bringing together all of the knowledge and information we have as a community so that we can utilize it effectively is something that is just, you know, it boggles my mind every time I think about the fact that we haven't done it, okay? More bluntly, though, I'm going to be honest with you. While all the work we're doing in L&I, I'll be honest, I don't think it goes far enough, fast enough. And so I know that we're trying to crawl, walk, run on this, but as a former analyst and a user and seeing the huge potential that this has in enabling us as a community to do a much more effective job, I would really like to see it move much faster than we are. So what's it all about? All right. Well, as you can see, the concept behind the library is just to build the digital library of all of the disseminated intelligence. That is the intelligence that all the various agencies have agreed should be shared amongst everybody else so that we can basically understand what we know about any given topic, okay? And so what this would provide in the first basis is the ability to truly know what we know, all right? And that's a novel concept, right? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to know what we know about any topic that's happening in the world? What have we said in the past? You heard several speakers up here talk about the fact that our ability to do this is seminal to the future of us as an intelligence community. It's seminal to the ability for us as an intelligence community to deliver on the obligations and needs we have to support national security into the future of the nation. Right? So, well, the thought isn't very novel. I got to tell you that as a former analyst, okay, this is one of the things that used to drive me crazy. Okay, what was the analyst's greatest fear? Anybody? I like participative. Anybody? What is it that worries people every single day? Security? Yeah, there you go. Right. I'm sorry. What? Being covered. Right. Missing information. Did somebody say that? All right, yeah, right, give that man a prize down there. Right? Yeah, what did I miss today? What didn't I see? What's going to bite me in the butt and what I'm going to do, okay? And I got to tell you from personal experience, one of the things I used to hate happen to me back in my analytic days was go down to a big meeting at the NSC on something that you've presented this, put together this big presentation, sit down in the room, and everybody in the room except you has a seminal piece of intelligence, and in my case, always produced by my own agency, all right? So then you go back to your own agency and say, well, why in the heck didn't, I use a stronger word, but why in the heck didn't I know about this? Oh, we didn't think you needed to know. It used to drive me insane. All right? I don't know how you guys feel about it, but that used to drive me nuts, all right, as an analyst. All right? And it probably still drives you all nuts as analysts today, okay? The other thing that we got to be able to do is provide clear knowledge and insight into what goes on and what do we cover as a community. What is it that we've got? What have we written on in the past? What are we covering today? What are we reporting on? What are we analyzing today? All right? But even more important, okay, skipping down to the fourth bullet down there, is where do we have gaps in information? Okay, all right? The gaps are really important, right? So one of the things that I've asked my guys in CA Wire to do when it goes out is to pay particular attention to searches that return no results. Now, why is that important? Well, it could be a bad search, right? Most likely, all right? But more importantly, it could be a gap in knowledge onto which we have either done no collection, meaning I have no NCS content that we've disseminated out there on it, or we have done no analysis, all right, on a subject that we can put out there to support somebody. And if a lot of people or a significant number are searching for something, that's a clear indicator that we have a gap that we ought to go figure out how to fill, because it's important to our customer set to have that done. So it's these gaps that help us to be a much better and much more responsive organization, and to have our information, our content brought together enables us to fill those things, understand them, and address them, okay? And then finally, wouldn't it be nice to know who saw what, when, where? All right, instead of trying to guess as to whether or not a policymaker has seen this or somebody else, it would be nice to know in a coherent form what everybody has seen, right? So that we can understand what we've given to who has what knowledge, and how to engage them perhaps better for the future. All right. So the other thing that we want to be able to do in the end is we want to give one-stop shop for all intelligent information. Wouldn't it be nice to issue one search question, right, and get back a coherent set of information that you're allowed to see, because remember, we still live in a secure world, we'll talk about it in a sec here, on the subject that you're asking about, right? Today, I don't know how you guys search in your various organizations, but internally inside of CIA, one of the things we're trying to fix is the fact that our analysts have to go to multiple different repositories to ask the same damn question over and over again, and then whose time are we valuing, right? We're valuing the system's time, because the analyst has to sit down and they've got to integrate all that data together, right? So one-stop shop to bring all that off, okay? And then finally, think about this one, okay? We talk about collaboration a lot and how important collaboration is, and I believe in collaboration wholeheartedly. I'll talk about that in a little bit more in a second here, right? But think about what happens. If you have a common base of knowledge, meaning you have absolute assurance that you have seen or have had the ability to see all the information that all of your collaborative partners have seen, the conversation about and the collaboration starts at a completely different point. It's no longer about what did you see and what haven't I seen. It's more and starts almost immediately into what does it mean, all right, for us as a nation and as a community. Right? And that's a huge departure point, because so much of the time is spent, oh my God, have I seen everything? What have I missed? What's not there? All the, all the angst issues can fade away, and we can focus more energy, more of the really important stuff, what I call carbon-based wetware, okay, the stuff between people's ears, on getting the job done, okay? All right, next slide. All right, so let's talk about the LNI and what we're going to do, all right? So it's going to be done in phases, all right? So the pilot phase, phase 1, is going to be delivered around the end of October. I have written October 31. My guys tend to be very conservative. When they say to deliver in October, they mean probably about 10 p.m. on October 31st, but that's okay. All right, so what is it? All right, it's a single repository of disseminated intelligence from a select number of IC members. Okay, so CIA is one. I'll be honest with you, I don't know who the others are, so if you ask me that question, I don't have the answer on the tip of my fingers here, right? We will deliver a user-searchable index catalog of the metadata about these products, okay? So you can get in there and you can discover what's going on. It's at the TSSITK level, okay? All right? When the organizations themselves contribute material to the Library of National Intelligence, we will deliver in return a return receipt that says, yes, we acknowledge that you put your content in there, so you know that it's there, right? We use this for tracking purposes and information and sharing, right? And then access control and access management will be based on PKI certificates. Now, that's an interesting problem we'll talk about a little bit, but that is a big thing, okay? How are we going to do access control, access management, and security on these things so that you can have access to the information that's in the thing, right? And then it's going to be a web interface, so it'll be up on inside your browser, so it's simple, easy to use, very intuitive, that's there. Right? We will have predefined metrics and full audit so that we can generate reporting on who searched for what, who looked for what, who looked at various things, how much content was contributed on what subject areas by the various people that are getting in there, okay? So that's fundamentally what LNI is about, all right? So the pilot concept, next slide please, this is just a graphic that basically shows the same thing, right? So various agencies will be contributing their products. They will get a receipt back acknowledging that they put their information in there. We will use the metadata that is generated about the content that's put into the LNI to generate the card catalog. The card catalog is what the users will see and search. and deal with. At that stage of the game, deal with the metadata from that, and then we generate reporting out the door. Okay. Go on to the next slide. And the next phase of the pilot, okay, on the expansion side, all right, our goal is a little broader. Right, we'll be creating what we call a portable, unclassified version of the card catalog. We want to get the card catalog out at all the levels. So at the JWEX TSSCI level, at the SIPRNet secret level, and at the unclassified level, so that you can reach the broadest possible audience across the community and with all of our partners that we have to do work with. Okay. We want to be able to promote the card catalog, share it, right? Non-Title 50s as well as the Intel principals that have access to it, right? We want to begin to this integration of the A space for collaborative purposes, okay? So we need to enable better discovery and things like that on there. And we want to make sure that we ingest all of the products from all of the IC in this next phase that's going to go, okay? All right. So that's the summary. Next slide. All right. So what I really wanted to talk to you guys about. So the LNI is here. We're building it. It's going to be delivered in October. All right. But I think we ought to talk about where we need to go. All right. And some of the vision that we see as we look at this thing and the potential that's going to be there. All right. So in the end, when I look at LNI and I look at A space, look at all the things that are coming together here, what is it really all about? All right. Well, it's about three things. It's about connecting people to people, people to data, and data to data. Okay. Well, A space is covering the people-to-people aspect of this thing, all right? The LNI is going to form a core foundation of connecting people to data, and in the end, the data to data itself, okay? So Catalyst, Quantum Leap, and things like that, right? But we've got to begin to ask ourselves some questions as a community, okay? Do we want to have, in the end, a single repository of information that everybody goes to, right, to get stuff done, or do we do federated holdings? Remember we talked about the firewall issue before, the 120 ways across the firewall? Which way are we heading as a community, as an organization? And the reason why this question is important is how are you going to do work with data? All right? In the tool space, one size does not fit all, okay? Political analysts don't use the same tools as military analysts, which don't use the same tools as, science and weapons analysts, right? People use different things to get their data, to get their work done. They use different sets of data, and oftentimes they have different collections of data, all right? So along with depositing stuff into the LNI that could be a central repository, is that going to be the space where all the data gets analyzed, gets crunched together and things like that? Or do you reach in across the boundaries? Do we deal with the firewall issue and reach in across the boundary and use the A space as something which says, have I seen, do I have coherency in my data? And then reach directly in to deal with the data as it sits inside each of the organizations. This is a big deal, and to the security guys, this is sort of their nightmare on steroids, if you want to really think about it from that perspective. The other question is it just simply an archive of holdings, or do you really do something else with it? All right? Now, I'll give you my answer. I think you've got to do something else with it. Simply putting a pile of data out for more people to access and deal with and do their things doesn't buy it, okay? Simply putting Google on top of it or any other search engine and delivering a hit list of 100,000 hits back because that's what you could deliver back on somebody's query doesn't cut it any longer, right? We really have to deliver is what we call mass analytics, pre-correlated data sets, pre-extracted data, the things that the Catalyst is talking about doing and the Quantum Leap are talking about doing, but where is that going to happen when you begin to look at the Library of National Intelligence as the core holdings, right? Is that done within the library itself, or is that done externally in other places and then brought back to the library? Lots of these are questions and issues that we ourselves are going to have to wrestle our way through and figure out how we do these things. Right? So one of the things that's absolutely essential for the underpinnings of any future success, we talk about this stuff, is standards. The woman in the back who asked the questions about the API, right? That's really an important question because it really isn't about the API. It's about what standards do we apply, and do we apply data standards across the board here, right? So think about this, all right? I'm going to ask you guys a question. Google has done amazing things, right? Web 2.0, all the mashups, right? You guys do this, right? Have you seen the stuff that's out there? Right? Anybody use Map My Run, is that what it's called, and other things like that? And you look at the number of stuff that is generated on top of what? A very simple set of data and a very simple set of standards, right? Okay. I submit to you that we as a community don't have that yet. We're getting there. Interlink has driven this a long way. We're doing a lot of these things. But there really are 5 things that make Google successful in the standards world. Anybody know what those are? Right? So you've got to have wires, right, to connect stuff up, yeah, right? You've got to have a transportation protocol, right, the rules of the road, TCP/IP, right, okay? And then another funny thing comes along. Right? Anybody know what that is? All right, so you got a bunch of roads, you got a bunch of cars, you can drive on the road, and somebody says, go to the White House in Reston, Virginia. Well, what the hell good is that, right? We got to have addressing, right? URLs, DNS, name services, and the funny thing is we've got to have persistent, unique identifiers for every object that's out there. This is a huge driver that I'm trying to push internally in CIA. Get every object uniquely identified and make it permanent with the thing, because you got to be able to use it, okay? If you don't do that, none of these other services are going to work in the long haul. All right, you're going to have complete chaos on your hands there. All right, so now I got a road. All right, that's there. I got rules on how to drive: left side, right side, stop signs, stop lights. Right, I got addressing. That's got to be in place. Okay, that's it. All right, what else became important to make Google happen? Remember, Google couldn't happen. Those three things existed long before Google did. What was the next thing? Anybody? No, the browser. Well, two things actually: the browser and HTML, data standards. Right, what does my stuff look like, and then a common environment in which to get at it. Right? Without those things, you couldn't even have Google today, and then Google could then build on top of that environment and make it go. If we don't have those level standards and they're not enforced so that all of the tools, all you, the vendors out here, hear this, if they're not enforced across our tools and our suites and our services and our capabilities so that we can exchange this information in common ways so we can share it effectively and efficiently, we can't get anywhere. All right? That's what we've got to be able to do. And the reason why I bring this up as part of the LNI, right, is that if you look at the LNI as that holdings of all this content and all this information, if it isn't built to those standards, it's going to fail. It's going to be a useless thing that's going to sort of sit out there and not be very successful. So we got to build it to those sets of standards. Okay, data quality. I'm sorry, long-winded here, but I'm very serious about this stuff. Okay, so data quality. We have to ensure the quality of the data. Now, the stuff going in that in the beginning, all right, is all the things that the intelligence members, committee members, have agreed are the disseminated products. These are things that you've agreed have high enough quality to get added into the data set, all right? The data quality becomes important as we begin to do things like Catalyst, extracting people, places, names, dates, organizations, right? Or analytic contributions, you know, right? So what do I think about this? What's my thoughts about that? And these things begin to get mashed together. The problem with data quality is that we have a very low tolerance for errors in these things. So for instance, if an extraction engine says that Teresa Smetzer and I and Osama bin Laden are related because it read a sentence in a document that said that Teresa and I were having lunch and we were talking about Osama bin Laden, right? That's a failure right up front there, right? The first thing it's going to do, nobody has confidence in these things. So we have to have a mechanism that enables us to do this. But in order to make this work, we have to engage these collaborative processes in A-Space and others to enable us to do these corrections, because the machines can't do it all. Machines can suggest relationships. It's going to be up to us, the analyst, and the people doing the work to understand where they are, all right, and make them correct and validate them across the board. Okay? Information modularity and context. As we extract information from our various sources, all right, we have to keep up with what we call internally pedigree and lineage. This is where did it come from? What's the classification, the attributes of these things? What's the source authoritative? How authoritative is the source to get the information? This stuff has to come together, right? And if we don't keep track of that throughout the history of everything that we do, we don't have the ability to do traceability and understand how we arrived at the conclusions that we got given the data that we have. All right. Security. All right. We live in a world that requires security, right? There's no doubt about it. We have to have a mechanism to ensure that we do security well. That's our obligation, right? We swear this every time I do this. But we also have to figure out what security is going to be good enough so it's not getting in the way of what we're going to do, okay? And I think this is a critical issue and is really kind of woefully broken, right? I'll tell you right now, the one mechanism that we are using for need to know, right? You guys know this, topics and regions. How many guys are familiar with topics and regions? All right. All right. So we, in advance, decide, or you declare in advance, what areas of the world you're interested in and what subject areas you're interested in. Okay, well, does anybody know what's wrong with that? How do you know in advance what you got to know about? All right? I don't get it. All right? And I really think we need some serious work in trying to figure out a better model to make this happen. Okay, there's one that I like, which I call chain of evidence reasoning, which I can be glad to discuss at length, right? But it doesn't flow from a pre-decision on the day you come into work about what you can see. It flows from the work that you're doing as to what you ought to be able to see, right? And there's a that's a concept there that's very hard to get and very hard to understand, okay? So again, you can't know in advance everything you got to know. In fact, there's a classic example that I can give you, right? That if we break everything up into topics and regions, most of the issues we deal with are transnational now, right? Okay? So fundamentally, you got to know about almost all topics, or at least all regions and all topics, right? classic case, right, of watching an underground facility in a particular country, right? Well, it's built by firms over here in this part of the world with the equipment from this part of the world and scientists from that part of the world and this from another part of the world. And the fact is that it isn't just about that country of interest. It's about the transnational activity that spans a huge range of things and has tendrils absolutely everywhere. And you don't know that when you get into the problem, but as you dig, you discover it. And to have an access control mechanism that makes it too hard to get that information doesn't do us or doesn't do our customer set any good whatsoever, okay? So now, all right, if I can have data standards and I can have good quality stuff like that, the other big thing we got to have is common services across the networks and across the organizations. Right? So for example, we are working very hard to build a lot of geographic services, but so is NGA. So there is no reason for both of us to build the same sets of services. What I'd like to do, I'm going to be honest with you, from CI's perspective, I don't want to build it twice. I want to steal it from NGA, right? So as we build services on our common standards, we ought to share them. We need a mechanism to get them up so that we can more effectively deal with the information and share it across where we are. Right. And then my final comment, it's not on the slides here, but it's one that I heard today, and I will editorialize a little bit. We talked a lot about tools, right, and how we have too many tools or not enough tools to reach people and other things like that. And it really is not about fighting about whether we have too much investment in tools or too little investment in tools. The fact is that what we need is a rich toolbox. The problem we have is that we don't have a common stock underpinning, which is our data. All right. All right. You understand what I'm saying here? All right. Carpenters, there are a lot of carpenters in the world, right? Okay, you have house framers, they're carpenters. What are the tools they need? A saw and a hammer, right? You have the guys that do the filigrees and the OGs that go in the ceilings and the fancy ornate table legs, right? They're all carpenters. They all deal with a common stock. It's wood of standard sizes and things like that, but they use different tools to do their work to deliver the finished output of what they have, right? We have to begin to think of ourselves as that. We need to have a really rich toolbox that enables us to do the analysis and the work that we have to do on the data, but we've got to drive these standards at the data level so that we can then apply various tools to the common sets of data to get our analysis and our work done across the board. All right. So that's what I got for you today. All right. Kind of long. I got to my vision side, which is where I get passionate about. So I'll take any questions anybody has. And there we are. Okay. How will information contained in an RDBMS be handled? Will you keep a reference copy of the database updated in real time in the LNI? That's a great question. Okay. I don't know. I don't think we're at that stage yet. I think right now we're looking primarily at what is disseminated content and intelligence, which is mostly the written word, that human communications aspects of this thing. Right? And what we do is we have a lot of data in the RDBMS, which we're going to have to be all fairly exposed and how we share across the board, because so much more of information is there. I believe that that's where we're going to deal with this issue of the firewalls, is that rather than replicating these massive RDBMS data sets with billions of records in them across the community writ large, I think it'd be a whole lot better if we could figure out how we securely reach in and share that thing rather than trying to do the replication process. Okay. All right. How do you plan to combine other elements of the library's science and the library capabilities represented by the various agencies and the elements of the IC into the LNI? Well, there's a great question, and I don't know the answer to it. Let me think about that one. I don't know the answer to that one. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not sure how I would. Go back to that one real quick. How do you plan to combine any other elements of library science and library capabilities? I don't know. So, I'm sorry. Question back there?
Question to your,
Yeah.
The first question you had. I work at the Applied Physics Lab for Johns
Yeah.
Hopkins University. Our engineers look at intelligence that come in a variety of forms: models, data from databases, written products. Sometimes those are written products that are produced by allied nations that
Right.
come to us, the Intel community. Library of National Intelligence, how will it be able to deconflict all those data types? Will it be able to do that?
Okay, so part of the metadata attributes has got to be sourcing attribution of the content itself. You must know where the information came from. So if it's an allied produced product, say from West Germany, Germany, I'm dating myself. From Germany, okay. that would be part of the attributes that have to be in there. You need to know that information. That's got to be a critical underpinning of the metadata so that you can use that as part of your judgments and your evaluations, okay? All right. Okay, what's the analyst burden for posting information? Sounds like a great risk to the many programs like this as an added non-analytic. Okay, so analytic burden, interesting question. That's actually a very good one, okay? I'm not sure that the burden should be on the analyst to post here. All right, remember, we're talking about your agency's agreed upon disseminated intelligence products. So for example, in CIA, we are building a thing called POINT, Production of Intelligence. It's our automated workflow and production processing thing. I think one of the outcomes is when somebody presses that release button, we've just written a little bit of code that says, pop a copy into the LNI. How simple is that? And why wouldn't we do that for everybody across the entirety of the community? It's a very small thing to do. It's a very tiny investment. It's fully automated, and it takes no additional work on the analyst part. You guys focus on doing your work, right? Getting your product done. Let the system take care of putting stuff in there, right? As long as we can figure out from data standards, right, what your metadata is, so we can automatically populate the fields, makes us very happy. Okay. Yep. I'm sorry. Which one? I'm sorry, guys.
Right over here.
Lights are killing me. Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
As an analyst,
Yeah.
the LNI, I would agree that this is long overdue, and many people that I work with in INR are delighted to hear about it.
Yeah.
The question that a lot of us have, though, is the whole Roach Motel concept.
Okay.
We understand that if something is code word, that obviously that there are some accessibility issues. But if we can go on CIA source, or if we can go to DIA's webpage or INR's webpage and pull up materials that are at lower classifications in full, why can't, when we send something to the LNI, why can't we, I don't know, tick a box that says share this with whomever you would like, rather than make everything unaccessible?
Okay. So I think you're looking at the next phases of the LNI, which has got to be the fact that is actually you do your search and you get the actual products back, not just the card catalog data. But as we look to the future, this is sort of the crawl, walk, run philosophy. We want to get something going, get it in there, get it controlled, get it managed, prove that we can, as a community, provide the necessary security and access controls needs to make it happen. The problem with the model that you just described, and the one that drives me nuts, is that you just said that you as an analyst can go to this site and do this, and this site and do that, and that site and find these things. Who's doing the work? Right. Why do you want to do all that work? Bingo. Right. So I agree with you. I agree with you. We have to enable the search of the actual content itself to make it available across the board. Okay? Right? And deliver that. Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
If we're trying to go the way of living documents like Intellipedia, and then we have the
Yeah.
Library of National Intelligence, if I really want to know what we know,
Yeah.
where should I go?
Good question.
To the Intellipedia, or should I go to LNI?
So this is a discontinuity that we're going to have to solve and deal with, okay, as we step into this. Currently, the concept of the LNI is, if you look at Intellipedia is a bunch of knowledge we've collected together about analysts collaborating to produce what we think, what we know about what's in there, okay? Who has it mentioned they want to be able to put the seal of approval on those products that are there, okay, when they get stamped on? The LNI is about what's got the seal of approval from various agencies, meaning we concur with this. So you could actually imagine a world into which what would happen in Intellipedia, which is the moment somebody says, we think that's great and put their seal of approval on it, that copy of that text at that point in time would get put immediately into the LNI and become part of that record, okay? Why is that important to have part of the record? Because it's what we knew and agreed was right about the subject at that point in time. Remember, it's at the point in time is a critical construct here because it changes. As the Intellipedia rolls forward and changes, okay, you can backtrack through all those changes, but you don't necessarily want to have to do that by hand because of the sheer number of those things, right? So be able to look at those sets of things that we agreed were our position as an intelligence community or as an individual agency on the subject of how it can happen. So there's lots of ways we can tackle this one, but that's going to be a tough one. And collaborative production makes this really hard. So this is one thing that we are going to have to work on together to figure out the best way to do this, because we want to encourage collaborative production. But we also have to have a point at which we as a community agree that we have a position on something, right? This is our view. And what is it we believe is the case on a particular issue at a particular point in time? And I think that's really what is falling in the LNI, yeah.
As I see this, though, the LNI, if everything that goes in there has the specific organization's stamp of approval, this is a DIA-approved product.
Right.
That process for getting something approved by DIA and then posted out to the rest of the world, to me, the edges have been sanded off so much that everyone is all nice and happy with what it says.
Yeah, it's Pablo maybe.
Intellipedia,
Yeah.
for me, is
Right.
a place that I'm going to want to
Sure.
go. It's the go in ground truth
Right.
of what analysts think.
Yeah. Right. And so I don't know what to tell you the answer to the question is, except that it's something that we're going to have to figure out. Okay. And the ability to make sure that what's in Intellipedia, all right, and the L&I are going to have to be rationalized so that eventually you don't have to do work twice. Right. I think that's the big fallacy of IT that's happened for a long time is we stole cycles from users by making you do multiple things many times. We have to return that to you. I wish I had a better answer for you today, but I think the construct that we're looking at is this sort of dichotomy, is that that's the space we can go and you can discuss, collaborate, do things and whatnot. And then there's a point at which we all say, hey, we agree this is a position, this is how we, this is our view of the world, and be able to capture that, right? Those dynamics are going to come closer together over time. It's just a matter of how we're going to go about that. Okay. Bad answer, I know, I'm sorry. Yes.
In the private sector, we're leveraging MediaWiki's revision control to have, I was just saying in the private sector
Yeah.
for Sarbanes-Oxley, where there
Right.
also is the historical requirement there for the data, there's a leverage of the revision control and history in MediaWiki. Is there any way to leverage that part of Intellipedia for the purpose of the ongoing ground truth changing over time?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right, is that that's what you'd be leveraging is that functionality, right? And if you look at it from a timestamp perspective, you could actually see how you could make that happen. This is what we believe at this point in time, this is what we believe at this point in time, all right? And we do a search, right, because there's so many iterations in between there. If you have a position statement that you can see as more discrete elements, it actually, I think, would make the analyst lives a lot easier than rolling back through all of the various discussion and commentary and changes that occurred. If you can look at discrete changes, because you could then see from 1987 to 2007, 2009. Let's move it up to the future here, right? This is how our position changed, and you could see it in discrete increments as opposed to this continuous rollback loop that's there, which is actually kind of hard to deal with if there's a lot of changes that happen through this window of time, right? So, but that's what you got to leverage, right? Okay. All right, it's not clear how A-Space and L&I will connect consumers or to experts or experts to experts. Could L&I be extended also to catalog IC's experts? Okay, so my view is data is data. You can put anything in that you want. The concept behind the L&I was that it wasn't about the people into the business, it was about the data into the business. But, you know, you can put expertise in there as well. That works for me. Yeah.
You're a state top secret clear officer.
Right.
You go into the
Uh-huh.
if there's a top secret gap, and you don't know that document's there, but you can't read it,
Okay.
it goes down to that chain.
All right.
You have does it exist?
Yes. Right. Right. So right now there are basically, I have to work my way through this. There's several levels at which this happens. Right. Because you present, in this case, we're requiring a PKI cert to be presented. Because you present a PKI cert, any document that you have that's HCS or Gamma that you don't have an HCS or Gamma clearance for, you can know the existence of, all right, and see the fact that the title is there, all right, and therefore you can know it's there, and with a reference where you click on it to contact so-and-so or something else along those lines to make it happen. This is how we're making this happen today. In the future world, when you come in at various levels, for example, if you don't have a PKI cert or something on a lower level, then you're not getting in that way, the rules are going to be varied depending on the situation that's there. So if you don't have, if you can't validate TSSITK clearances, for example, then the odds are they're not even going to show you the existence of HCS and Gamma content over there, right? So it's going to be a chain of capabilities you got to roll up. I forget who it was, Mike Wertheimer or whatever was talking about the different ways that you can do it, right? The better way is how many ways can you say yes, okay, before you have to say absolutely no. And we're trying to make sure that the most information is presented that we can possibly do, okay. All right. Okay, is it only IC product or product will be non, somebody asked that question before. Right now I think the concept is just intelligence community documents to start, all right? But all right, if you think about this in the extreme, all right, all content that we utilize in order to do analysis ought to be able to be made available to anybody who needs to see it, right? So as you look down the line at something like the LNI and the great power it brings, this ability to bring all that information together, surely is something that we ought to consider leveraging at some level. Okay. All right. How much time do I have? I'm way over. Sorry. All right. And one last question. How can incentives be crafted to reward the integrator community to create shared services on a much larger scale? Great question. I think the incentive is very simple. As we head into an era of where obviously declining budgets, none of us have the wherewithal to do things several times. All right? So as I said before, I don't want to redo the work that NGA has already done just so that we can do integrated mapping and use Google Earth and all those features and things inside of CIA. What I'll be able to do is take the work they've done, either leverage it where it sits at NGA or bring those services inside. I think the incentives are going to be entirely financial to the organization, and the next incentive is going to be speed-based. Why do something from scratch if what I can steal is good enough so I can be much more responsive to my customer set? Because in the end, it's all about being fast and agile, right? And getting the capabilities delivered to our customer set, all right? Okay, thanks. All right.